Commander Jack Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty and watched the stars for what might be the last time in Council space. His hands gripped the rail as he thought about the 3 years of warnings that fell on deaf ears. The Galactic Council had made their choice, and now humanity would make theirs. Ambassador Lisa Carter walked onto the bridge with tired eyes and slumped shoulders. She had just returned from her final meeting with the Council representatives. The 12 alien species that ruled this part of the galaxy had laughed at her once again. They called human concerns about the approaching danger nothing more than fear and weakness. "They will not listen, Jack," Lisa said as she moved to stand beside him. "The Zephyrians think we are too young to understand real threats. The Corvans believe their military is the strongest in the galaxy. Even the peaceful Althan turned away when I showed them our sensor data." Jack nodded and activated his communication device. All across human space, captains and commanders waited for his signal. Captain Ryan Brooks on the UES Defender had his quantum drives ready. Captain Ben Taylor commanded a full destroyer squadron at the edge of the system. Dr. Amanda White had prepared detailed evacuation plans for every human colony and outpost. "The Council has made their choice," Jack said into his communicator. "They do not want our help or our warnings. They think we are primitive and violent. They believe their advanced technology and superior wisdom will protect them from any danger." The bridge crew listened in silence as their commander spoke. These humans had served alongside alien species for decades. They had shared knowledge and fought common enemies. They had built friendships and trusted partnerships. But when humanity tried to warn about the greatest threat the galaxy had ever faced, they were dismissed and ignored. "We offered them everything," Jack continued. "Our tactical knowledge, our military strength, our industrial capacity. We showed them sensor readings that proved the danger was real. We begged them to prepare defenses and evacuation plans. They laughed at us." Lisa Carter pulled up the holographic display that showed the last council meeting. The crystal-like Zephyrians had mocked human intelligence. Their leader called human strategic thinking crude and outdated. The proud Corvan warriors had dismissed human military tactics as barbaric. They claimed their 1,000-year empire had faced every possible threat. The Mechanical Nexus Collective had run calculations that proved humans were unnecessary. Their computer minds decided that human contributions could be easily replaced. The Aquatic Trillions had agreed that humans were too emotional to make logical decisions. Even the plant-like Verdani had supported removing humanity from all important discussions. 3 years ago, we detected the first signs," Dr. Amanda White said as she joined them on the bridge. "The dark space readings, the energy signatures, the quantum disturbances. Everything pointed to something massive approaching from outside our galaxy. We shared all our data with the Council." She brought up charts and graphs that showed the approaching threat. The readings were clear to anyone who knew how to interpret them. Something vast and hungry was moving through the void between galaxies. It consumed everything in its path and left nothing behind but empty space. "We called it the Void Swarm," Amanda continued. "Our best scientists worked for months to understand what we were seeing. The energy patterns matched nothing in our databases. This was something completely new and completely dangerous." Jack looked at the data one more time. Humanity had spent 3 years preparing for this threat. They had developed new weapons and defensive systems. They had created evacuation protocols and survival strategies. They had tried to share everything with their alien allies. "The Council thinks we are running away because we are scared," Lisa said with bitter laughter. "They do not understand that we are trying to save them. They see our evacuation as cowardice when it is actually the smartest tactical move possible." Captain Ryan Brooks appeared on the communication screen. His face showed the same mixture of sadness and determination that filled every human heart. "All ships report ready for departure, Commander. The civilian transports are loaded and the military vessels are prepared for long-range operations." Jack nodded and gave the order that would change everything. "Execute Operation Silent Exit. All human vessels will leave Council space immediately." No explanations, no final warnings, no goodbyes. We offered our hand in friendship and they slapped it away. Now they can face the darkness alone. Across dozens of star systems, human ships activated their quantum drives and disappeared into hyperspace. Colonies that had existed for generations were abandoned in hours. Research stations that had shared knowledge with alien partners went dark. Trade routes that had connected human and alien worlds fell silent. The UES Liberty was the last ship. To leave, Jack Morrison took one final look at the Council homeworld growing smaller in the distance. Somewhere down there, alien leaders were probably celebrating the departure of the troublesome humans. They had no idea what was coming for them. "Set course for the rally point," Jack ordered. "All human forces will gather at the edge of dark space. We will watch and wait. When the Void Swarm arrives, the Council will understand why we tried so hard to warn them." The Liberty jumped into hyperspace and left Council space empty of human presence for the first time in over a century. Behind them, 12 alien species prepared to learn a lesson about the cost of arrogance. High Counselor Vexthan stood in the center of the great Council chamber and felt satisfaction flow through his crystalline body. The humans were finally gone and the galaxy could return to proper order. Around him, representatives from the 12 species that ruled civilized space nodded in agreement. The troublesome humans with their crude warnings and violent solutions had removed themselves from the equation. "The departure of humanity should be celebrated," announced General Korthik of the Corvan Empire. His massive frame and battle-scarred armor made him an impressive figure even among the diverse alien species. They brought nothing but chaos and barbarism to our peaceful galaxy. Their so-called military expertise was nothing more than primitive aggression. Elder Siolin of the Alphen floated gracefully in her biosuit filled with the methane atmosphere her species required. Her soft voice carried easily through the chamber's translation systems. "While I regret the loss of their medical knowledge, I must agree that their violent nature made cooperation difficult. Perhaps now we can focus on diplomatic solutions to our challenges." The Nexus Collective Representative, a complex arrangement of mechanical parts and quantum processors, provided calculated analysis. Human industrial output represented only 12% of total galactic production. This shortfall can be compensated within 2 standard cycles through increased automation and efficiency improvements across member species. Counselor Zexry of the Trillions adjusted her aquatic environment suit and added her thoughts. "The humans always claimed to detect threats that our superior sensor networks could not verify. Their emotional responses clouded their judgment and led to unnecessary panic about imaginary dangers." Vexthan activated the holographic display that showed recent intelligence reports. Massive human fleets had been detected gathering at the galaxy's edge, far beyond the reach of Council space. The readings showed thousands of ships arranged in defensive formations around what appeared to be mobile colonies and industrial platforms. "As expected, the humans are preparing for permanent exile," Vexthan explained to the assembled representatives. "Their primitive survival instincts have driven them to flee rather than face their responsibilities. This confirms our assessment that they were never worthy of membership in civilized galactic society." General Korthak studied the fleet positions with professional interest. Their formations showed typical human paranoia. They positioned defensive screens around civilian targets, as if expecting imminent attack. This behavior demonstrates why they could never adapt to peaceful coexistence with advanced species. The Verdani representative, a towering plant-like being with leaves that shifted color to indicate mood, rustled with what translated as amusement. Humans always saw enemies where none existed. Their biological heritage as predators made them incapable of understanding that the galaxy had evolved beyond such primitive concerns. Dr. Melson of the scientific cast added her analysis. Human research into exotic energy phenomena was always tainted by their military applications focus. They wasted resources investigating imaginary threats instead of contributing to beneficial technologies that could improve life for all species. The Council chamber's central hologram shifted to show the abandoned human territories. Dozens of star systems now stood empty, their colonies evacuated and their industrial facilities shut down. The speed of the human withdrawal had surprised even the Council's best strategists. The efficiency of their departure proves they had been planning this abandonment for some time, observed Commander Nexville of the HFY Union. This was not a spontaneous decision but a calculated withdrawal. They never intended to remain part of our civilized community. Vex then nodded in agreement and brought up the territorial redistribution plans. With human space now available, for proper development we can expand our member species into regions that will be much better utilized. The Corvan Empire will take control of the former human military installations. The Zephyrian Collective will manage the research facilities. The Nexus Collective's mechanical voice added precise details. Economic projections indicate a 17% improvement in galactic productivity once human territories are properly integrated into existing supply chains. Their inefficient resource allocation will be corrected through superior automated management systems. Elder Sialin requested permission to speak, and her gentle words carried across the chamber. I do hope the humans will find peace in their exile. Despite their flaws, they were fellow sapient beings deserving of basic compassion. Perhaps isolation will teach them the value of cooperation over conflict. General Korthek's laughter boomed through the chamber. Peace will only come to humans when they abandon their warrior culture and learn to submit to superior wisdom. The galaxy is safer without their weapons and their constant preparation for wars that exist only in their primitive imaginations. The session continued for several hours as the council members discussed the practical details of absorbing human territories. Trade routes would be reorganized, defense responsibilities redistributed, and research projects reassigned to more capable species. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Dr. Yexri of the Zephyrian Science Cast presented her final analysis of human research data. Their studies into dimensional physics and exotic energy phenomena were fundamentally flawed by their military applications bias. True scientific advancement requires the peaceful cooperation that humans could never achieve. As the session concluded, Vexton felt confident that the Council had made the correct decision. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations could handle any challenge through cooperation and superior technology. Human warnings about approaching dangers had been nothing more than fear-mongering, designed to maintain their relevance in galactic affairs. The last item on the agenda was the formal vote to redistribute human assets. The motion passed unanimously, with no dissenting voices. 12 species that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years saw no reason to doubt their continued supremacy outside the chamber. Automated systems began the process of claiming abandoned human facilities. The transition would be smooth and efficient, managed by species that understood the value of order and cooperation. The galaxy would be better without the chaos and violence that humans brought to every situation. Unknown to the celebrating council members, deep space sensors at the galaxy's edge were beginning to detect the first signs of something vast and hungry approaching from the darkness between stars. Captain Grimtalk of the Corvan border fleet felt pride swell in his chest as he surveyed his magnificent warships. The massive vessels represented 1,000 years of military evolution and technological advancement. Their weapons could shatter planets, and their shields could withstand the fury of stars. No force in the known galaxy could challenge the might of the Corvan Empire. The border patrol consisted of 12 heavy cruisers and 30 escort vessels, all positioned at the outer edge of Council space where the humans had predicted their imaginary threat would appear. Grimtalk had volunteered for this assignment to prove that Corvan warriors feared nothing, especially the phantom enemies that had driven humanity into exile. Sensor contact bearing 27 Mark IV, reported his tactical officer. Multiple unknown vessels emerging from dark space exactly where the human data indicated. Grimtalk studied the readings with professional interest. The signatures were unlike anything in the Corvan military database. The energy patterns seemed to shift and fluctuate in ways that defied known physics. Whatever these vessels were, they did not match any technology used by Council species. All ships to battle stations, Grimtalk ordered with confidence. Unknown vessels? This is Captain Grimtalk of the Corvan Imperial Fleet. You have entered Council space without authorization. Identify yourselves and state your intentions. The response came not in words but in action. The unknown vessels accelerated toward the Corvan fleet with impossible speed. Their forms seemed to blur and shift as they moved, sometimes appearing solid and sometimes fading into translucent shadows. The tactical displays struggled to maintain targeting locks on enemies that seemed to exist only partially in normal space. "Sir, the energy readings are off the scale," his science officer reported. With growing alarm, "These entities are drawing power from our own ships somehow. Our shield generators are losing efficiency just from their proximity." Grimtalk felt the first stirring of unease as his flagship's lights began to dim. The Void Swarm had arrived, exactly as the humans had warned, and they were nothing like any enemy the Corvan military had ever faced. These creatures seemed to drain energy from everything around them, feeding on the very power that made modern civilization possible. "All weapons, fire at will," Grimtalk commanded. "Show these invaders the might of the Corvan Empire." The fleet's massive guns opened fire with devastating volleys that could have destroyed entire cities. Plasma bolts and particle beams lanced out toward the approaching swarm entities. For a moment, Grimtalk felt his confidence return as the familiar thunder of Corvan weapons filled the void. His satisfaction lasted exactly 3 seconds. The energy weapons passed harmlessly through many of the swarm entities as if they were ghosts. Other creatures absorbed the incoming fire and seemed to grow larger and more solid. The most terrifying sight was watching his most powerful weapons simply disappear into dark voids that opened in space itself. "Sir, the enemy is not taking damage," his tactical officer reported with panic creeping into his voice. "Our weapons are either missing completely or being absorbed. Some of the entities are actually feeding on our energy discharges." The swarm reached the outer edge of the Corvan formation and the real horror began. The creatures flowed over and through the escort vessels like living darkness. Grimtalk watched in shock as his proud warships went dark one by one. Their power systems failed, their weapons ceased firing, and their hulls began to dissolve under the touch of entities that existed beyond normal matter. "Emergency power to shields," Grimtalk shouted, but his engineering officer could only shake his head in despair. The ship's main reactor was already failing as something drained its energy faster than the fusion process could produce it. The bridge lights flickered and died, leaving only the pale glow of emergency systems. The communications array crackled to life with desperate transmissions from the dying fleet. Captain Veltar of the cruiser Domination screamed warnings about creatures that phased through solid matter to attack the crew directly. Commander Zekmal reported that his ship's hull was dissolving like ice in acid wherever the swarm entities touched it. "All ships retreat immediately," Grimtalk ordered, but it was already too late for most of his fleet. The swarm moved with purpose and intelligence, cutting off escape routes and surrounding individual vessels. They seemed to understand Corvan tactics better than the Corvans understood them. The flagship shuddered as something massive attached itself to the hull. Through the viewports, Grimtalk could see writhing shadows with too many angles and dimensions that hurt to look at directly. The emergency lighting failed as the creature began draining power from the backup systems. "Sir, hull breach on decks 7 through 12, his damage control officer reported. "But there is no physical breach. The entities are passing through solid matter and attacking crew members directly. We have no defense against this type of assault." Grimtalk felt cold fear replace his warrior's pride as he realized the truth. The humans had been right about everything. This enemy was beyond anything the Council's military forces could handle with conventional tactics. The Corvan Empire's greatest fleet was being destroyed by creatures that operated according to principles that made no sense. "Launch all escape pods," he ordered with bitter resignation. "Transmit all tactical data to Council Command. They must be warned about what we have learned here." The few escape pods that managed to launch told a terrifying story. Captain Yulson of the escort vessel Thunder reported watching his ship's armor plating simply cease to exist where the swarm touched it. Lieutenant Gexra described crew members being drained of life energy until they became empty husks that crumbled to dust. Within 30 minutes, the entire Corvin border fleet had been consumed. The Void Swarm continued its advance into Council space, leaving behind nothing but empty void where proud warships had once patrolled. The few survivors who reached Council Command brought warnings that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. The mechanical minds of the Nexus Collective received the tactical data and ran immediate calculations. Their quantum processors, designed to solve any problem through superior logic and computational power, could not even begin to model an enemy that ignored the fundamental laws of physics. Dr. Yexri of the Zephyrian Science Cast studied the sensor readings with growing horror. Her crystalline intellect evolved over millions of years to understand the deepest mysteries of the universe, could not comprehend entities that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions. Simultaneously, the Council's greatest military minds gathered. An emergency session to analyze the defeat of the Corvin border fleet. Every tactical principle they had developed over thousands of years of warfare proved useless against an enemy that could phase through solid matter and drain energy from any technological system. High Counselor Vexton stared at the reports and felt the first crack in his confidence. The humans had tried to warn them about this exact threat. Every detail matched the data that Ambassador Lisa Carter had presented to the Council 3 years ago. The species they had dismissed as primitive and paranoid had been the only ones who truly understood what was coming. High Counselor Vexton stood before the emergency assembly with his crystalline form trembling in ways that his species had not experienced for millennia. The reports from the border regions grew worse with each passing hour. Entire star systems were going dark as the Void Swarm advanced deeper into Council space. Their greatest fleets had proven as helpless as children against an enemy that defied every principle of known warfare. "We must find the humans immediately," Vexton announced to the assembled representatives. The proud beings who had dismissed humanity just weeks earlier now hung on his every word. They warned us about this exact threat 3 years ago. They may be our only hope of survival. General Korthic's armor showed fresh battle scars from his failed attempt to reinforce the border defenses. His voice carried none of its former arrogance as he reported his findings. "I have dispatched scout ships to every known human outpost and colony. They found nothing but empty facilities and deactivated defense platforms. The humans evacuated everything when they left." Dr. Melson of the Trillions had spent sleepless days analyzing the tactical data from the swarm encounters. Her aquatic environment suit showed signs of hasty repair from her desperate evacuation from a research station. "The enemy operates according to principles that we do not understand. They exist partially outside normal space-time and can drain energy from any technological system. Our weapons are useless against them." Commander Nexville of the Hektai Union brought up holographic displays showing the rapid expansion of the swarm territory. Red zones marked systems that had gone completely silent, while yellow areas indicated regions under immediate threat. The progression matched human predictions with terrifying accuracy. "Captain Zoran has discovered something significant," Nexville reported as he activated a communication link. The veteran scout captain appeared on screen from his ship at the edge of former human space. His normally confident expression showed deep worry as he began his report. "Counselor, we found massive supply depots that the humans left behind," Zoran explained while transmitting visual data. "The facilities contain weapons and equipment unlike anything in our databases. The technology appears specifically designed to combat the type of enemy we now face." The holographic display showed strange devices that seemed to bend light around themselves. Energy signatures indicated power systems that operated on principles the Council's best scientists could not identify. Storage areas contained what appeared to be armor and weapons designed for warfare against entities that existed Outside normal physics, Elder Ellen floated closer to examine the data with her gentle but keen intellect. These devices show clear signs of preparation for asymmetric warfare against an enemy that can phase through normal matter. The humans were not only aware of the threat but had been developing countermeasures for years. The Nexus Collective representative processed the information through quantum calculations that ran for several minutes before providing analysis. Human industrial capacity was redirected toward exotic weapons development approximately 4 years ago. Their stated research goals made no sense until now. They were preparing for this specific enemy. Dr. Yexri of the Zephyrian Science cast studied the weapon designs with growing amazement and horror. These systems incorporate dimensional manipulation technology that we believed was purely theoretical. The humans achieved breakthroughs in applied physics that our civilization missed completely. Captain Melrin of the Aquatic Trillions transmitted new findings from her exploration of abandoned human research facilities. I have discovered detailed tactical analyses of the Void Swarm dating back 5 years. The humans tracked this threat from its origin point in dark space and predicted its arrival with mathematical precision. The research data painted a picture of human scientific capability that shocked the assembled council members. Humanity had detected the swarm while it was still between galaxies and had spent years developing both defensive and offensive technologies, specifically designed to combat the threat. Look at this tactical manual, Melrin continued as she transmitted a human military document. They classified the swarm entities into 17 different types based on their dimensional characteristics and energy consumption patterns. Each type has specific vulnerabilities that can be exploited with the right technology. Vexthan felt shame burn through his crystalline structure as he realized the magnitude of the Council's mistake. Humanity had offered to share all of this knowledge freely. They had begged the Council to prepare defenses and develop countermeasures. Every warning had been dismissed as primitive fear-mongering. We treated them like barbaric children, Vexthan admitted to the Assembly. They were actually the most advanced military scientific civilization in the galaxy. While we perfected our existing technologies, they were developing solutions to threats we could not even imagine. General Korthak's voice carried bitter regret as he added his own discoveries. I found human training facilities equipped with simulation systems that perfectly replicated swarm combat scenarios. Their military personnel had been drilling for this exact war for 3 years. They were ready. The Verdani representative rustled, with colors that indicated deep sorrow and regret. Our arrogance blinded us to their true capabilities. We saw their military preparations as primitive aggression when they were actually developing the salvation of galactic civilization. Dr. Yexri brought up more human research that showed the true scope of their preparations. They identified the swarm's dimensional vulnerabilities and developed quantum resonance weapons specifically designed to disrupt their phase capabilities. The humans solved problems that our greatest minds considered impossible. The emergency session continued through several cycles as more scout ships reported their findings. Every discovery reinforced the same devastating truth. Humanity had been the galaxy's best hope against the Void Swarm, and the Council had driven them away through pride and prejudice. Send ships to the galaxy's edge, Vexthan finally ordered. Find the human fleets and beg them to return. Offer them anything they want. Leadership of the Council, control of our military forces, access to all our resources. The galaxy cannot survive without their knowledge. Captain Zoran's image flickered with interference as the swarm's energy-draining effects reached even the communication systems. Sir, we have been trying to locate the human fleets for weeks. They have completely disappeared from all known space. Even their exhaust trails have been masked somehow. The terrible reality settled over the council chamber. Like a burial shroud, the humans were gone, vanished as completely as if they had never existed. The only species that understood how to fight the Void Swarm had removed themselves from the galaxy entirely. Keep searching, Vexthan commanded with desperation creeping into his normally composed voice. They must be somewhere. Send ships too? Every star system, every nebula, every asteroid field. The survival of every living being in this galaxy depends on finding them. As the council members dispersed to coordinate the desperate search, the red zones on the tactical display continued to expand. The void swarm consumed everything in its path, leaving behind empty space where vibrant civilizations had thrived for thousands of years. The first sign of hope came as a whisper in space itself. Admiral Jake Sullivan stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and watched the quantum scanners detect the massive energy disturbances around the Council's core worlds. The void swarm had reached the heart of galactic civilization exactly as human scientists had predicted 3 years ago. "All fleet commanders report ready for combat operations," came the voice of General Kate Morris from the UES Vengeance. Her massive battle cruiser led the assault wing that had been specifically designed and built during humanity's exile. The ships bore new configurations that would have seemed impossible to the aliens who had dismissed human engineering capabilities behind the lead vessels. Thousands of human ships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. Captain Ben Taylor's destroyer squadron took position on the flanks while Captain Tony Mitchell's engineering vessels prepared to deploy the quantum barriers that would change the nature of this war. The human fleet had returned, but they were no longer the same species that had left Council space in disgrace. "Sir, we are receiving multiple distress signals from Council forces," reported Lieutenant Colonel Amy Foster from her command position. Her Marines were equipped with void suits that could function in the energy-drained zones left behind by swarm attacks. "The Zephyrian home fleet is under assault. The Corvan Empire has lost 6 more star systems. The Nexus Collective is requesting immediate assistance." Admiral Sullivan studied the tactical displays that showed the scope of the disaster. The void swarm had consumed nearly 30% of Council space in just 2 months. Entire civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for millennia were being methodically harvested by entities that existed beyond normal understanding. "Do not respond to their communications yet," Sullivan ordered. His voice carried the weight of command earned through years of preparation for this exact moment. "Deploy the dimensional anchors first. I want every swarm entity locked into normal space before we engage." Dr. Steve Hamilton activated the exotic technology that humanity had developed during their exile. Quantum field generators created invisible barriers that prevented the swarm entities from phasing out of normal spacetime. The creatures that had seemed invincible suddenly found themselves vulnerable to conventional attacks. "Phase cannons are armed and ready," reported Captain Rachel Stone from her tactical command ship. The weapons had been designed specifically to target the dimensional instabilities that allowed swarm entities to exist partially outside reality. Human scientists had solved problems that the Council's greatest minds had considered impossible. The human fleet moved into battle formation with precision that spoke of endless drilling and preparation. Every ship knew its role in the complex dance of war against an enemy that operated according to alien principles. The humans had spent 3 years learning how to fight creatures that consumed energy and devoured matter itself. "First contact with swarm entities," announced Captain Ben Taylor as his destroyers engaged the enemy advance guard. The new human weapons sent brilliant beams of coherent energy that actually connected with their targets. Swarm creatures that had been immune to Council weapons began to dissolve under the impact of phase cannon fire. The aliens trapped within the besieged Council worlds watched in amazement as human ships systematically dismantled swarm formations that had seemed unstoppable. The phase cannon technology locked the entities into normal space where they could be destroyed by concentrated firepower. Quantum barriers prevented them from retreating into the dimensional void that had made them invulnerable. "Sir, the Zephyrian High Counselor is attempting to establish communication," reported the communications officer. "He is requesting immediate audience with Fleet Command." Sullivan considered the request while watching his ships continue their methodical destruction of the swarm forces. The same aliens who had laughed at human warnings were now begging for salvation from the species they had dismissed as primitive and violent. "Patch him through," Sullivan finally decided. The holographic image of Vexton appeared on the bridge, his crystalline form showing stress fractures that indicated extreme emotional distress. The proud being who had presided over humanity's dismissal now prostrated himself before human military might. "Admiral Sullivan, I beg you to accept the Council's formal surrender and apology." Vexton's words came in a rush of desperate humility. "We were wrong about everything. Humanity was trying to save us, and we were too arrogant to listen. Please help us save what remains of our civilizations." Sullivan let the silence stretch for several moments while his ships continued their assault on the swarm formations. Human Marines led by Amy Foster were already deploying to evacuate alien civilians from threatened worlds. Dr. Helen Park's medical teams had set up treatment facilities for refugees who had been partially drained by swarm attacks. "The humans who warned you about this threat are gone," Sullivan replied with cold precision. "You made it clear that you did not want our help or our presence in your galaxy. We respected your wishes and left." Vexton's form trembled with desperation as he processed the implications. "Please, we understand our mistake now. We offer you complete control of the Council, leadership of all military forces, unlimited access to our resources and technology, anything you require to save our worlds." General Morris appeared on the communication channel from her battlecruiser. Her ships were systematically clearing swarm entities from the outer system, while human engineering teams deployed quantum resonance amplifiers. "The entity concentration around the core worlds is higher than our projections indicated. We need additional firepower to break their grip on the planetary populations." Captain Tony Mitchell's engineering corps had already begun constructing the massive quantum disruptor array that would drive the swarm entities completely out of normal space. The technology represented the pinnacle of human scientific achievement during their years of exile from galactic civilization. "All swarm entities in the target zone are now locked into normal space," reported Dr. Hamilton as his quantum barriers reached full effectiveness. "Phase cannon batteries have clear targeting solutions on all hostile contacts." The human fleet opened fire with weapons that had been specifically designed for this enemy. The swarm entities that had consumed Council fleets with impunity began to dissolve under the impact of phase cannon bombardment. Their ability to drain energy was neutralized by human power systems that operated on principles the aliens had never developed. "Sir, we are detecting massive swarm reinforcements approaching from dark space," warned Captain Stone. Her tactical displays showed new formations of entities emerging from the void between galaxies. Estimated time to contact is 6 hours. Sullivan nodded with satisfaction as he watched the current battle unfold according to human battle plans. "Deploy the dimensional mines along their approach vector. I want every reinforcement locked into normal space the moment they enter our engagement zone." The battle for the Council core worlds continued with methodical precision as human forces demonstrated their complete mastery of anti-swarm warfare. Every tactic had been tested and refined during 3 years of preparation. The aliens who had dismissed human military science were witnessing the salvation of their galaxy through technologies they could not even understand. "Admiral, the remaining Council fleets are requesting permission to assist in the operation," reported the communications officer. "They want to contribute to the defense of their own worlds." Sullivan considered the request while studying the tactical situation. The human fleet had the swarm forces completely outmatched, but additional support could reduce the time needed to clear the core systems. "Granted," he decided. "Assign them support roles under human command. Their weapons cannot penetrate swarm defenses, but they can assist with evacuation and logistics operations." The greatest battle in galactic history was being won by the species that the Council had driven into exile. 3 months after the first human ships returned to Council space, Admiral Jake Sullivan stood in the ruins of what had once been the greatest city on the Zephyrian homeworld. The crystalline spires that had symbolized alien superiority lay shattered and dark, their energy systems drained by the void swarm before human forces could arrive. The price of the Council's arrogance was written in the destruction of entire Civilizations. Captain Tony Mitchell's engineering teams worked tirelessly to restore power to the surviving structures. Human quantum generators provided energy that could not be consumed by residual swarm entities. The technology that had saved the galaxy was now being used to rebuild what the Council's pride had nearly destroyed. Final casualty reports are coming in from all sectors, reported General Kate Morris as she joined Sullivan among the debris. Her face showed the exhaustion of leading a 3-month campaign against an enemy that had consumed half the known galaxy. We saved approximately 60% of the total population, but entire species have been reduced to refugee status. Dr. Helen Park's medical facilities had processed millions of survivors who had been partially drained by swarm attacks. Human medicine, once dismissed as primitive by alien physicians, proved to be the only treatment capable of reversing the energy consumption effects. The irony was not lost on anyone involved in the relief efforts. The Corvan Empire lost their entire military fleet except for the ships that were serving under human command during the final battles, Morris continued. Their warrior culture has been completely shattered. General Korthek has formally requested that all remaining Corvan forces be permanently integrated into human military command. The transformation of galactic society had been as dramatic as the war itself. Species that had ruled their regions of space for thousands of years now looked to humanity for protection and guidance. The council chamber on the neutral world of Nexus Prime had been rebuilt according to human specifications, with humanity holding the central position once occupied by the Zephyrians. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Foster approached with her final report on the swarm elimination operations. Her Marines had spent weeks clearing the last holdout entities from the deep space regions where they had attempted to establish breeding colonies. All confirmed swarm signatures have been eliminated from Council space. The dimensional barriers are holding steady and preventing any new incursions. Sullivan nodded as he reviewed the strategic situation that had emerged from humanity's victory. The galaxy was safe, but it would never be the same. Trust between the alien species had been shattered along with their confidence in their own capabilities. Only humanity possessed the knowledge and technology necessary to prevent future swarm incursions. High Counselor Vexton is requesting a final meeting, reported Captain Rachel Stone. Her tactical command ship maintained constant surveillance of the galaxy's edge, watching for any signs of renewed swarm activity. He wants to formally transfer all remaining council authority to human administration. The meeting took place in the temporary council chamber that human engineers had constructed to replace the original facility destroyed in the war. Representatives from the surviving alien species gathered with the humility of beings who had learned the ultimate cost of their arrogance. Vexthan's crystalline form showed permanent stress fractures from the trauma of watching his civilization nearly consumed by the very threat humanity had tried to warn them about. His voice carried none of the superiority that had once characterized Zephyrian communication with other species. Admiral Sullivan, we formally request that humanity assume permanent leadership of what remains of galactic civilization, Vexton announced to the Assembly. Our pride and prejudice nearly led to the extinction of all intelligent life in this galaxy. We are not worthy to govern ourselves. Elder Sialin of the Althan floated in her biosuit with the same graceful movements, but her soft voice now carried deep sadness. The Althan people offer our complete submission to human authority. Our peaceful nature made us unable to recognize the true threat that you tried to warn us about. We failed in our most basic responsibility to protect our citizens. The Nexus Collective Representative had been rebuilt after the original unit was destroyed defending their homeworld. The mechanical intelligence that had once calculated human industrial output as replaceable now offered complete integration with human technological systems. All Nexus resources and computational capacity are hereby transferred to human control. Our logical processes were inadequate to comprehend the nature of the swarm threat. Dr. Melson of the Trillions spoke for her aquatic species with the same scientific precision, but her words carried acknowledgement of intellectual failure. Trillion research capabilities proved insufficient to develop countermeasures against the swarm entities. We request permanent access to human scientific methods and educational systems. General Korthik stood in his battle-scarred armor as the sole surviving representative of the once mighty Corvan Empire. His warrior's pride had been replaced by the humility of a soldier, who had witnessed the complete superiority of human military science. The Corvan military tradition has proven obsolete. We request integration into human command structures for any future defensive operations. Admiral Sullivan looked at the assembled representatives and felt the weight of responsibility that humanity had never sought. They had tried to share their knowledge as equals and partners. The aliens had chosen to see them as inferiors unworthy of respect or consideration. Humanity will accept the responsibility of protecting this galaxy, Sullivan announced after careful consideration. But we will not rule as conquerors or masters. We will establish the Galactic Defense Alliance with all species as equal partners under human military command. Captain Lisa Wells, formerly Ambassador Carter, stepped forward to outline the new governmental structure. She had returned from exile to help establish diplomatic relationships based on cooperation rather than species superiority. The alliance will focus on mutual defense and shared scientific advancement. All member species will contribute according to their capabilities. The formal ceremony transferring authority lasted several hours as each species officially dissolved their previous governmental structures. The proud civilizations that had dismissed humanity as primitive were now dependent on human protection for their very survival. The empty human colonies will remain as they are, Sullivan announced as the ceremony concluded. They will serve as memorials to the cost of arrogance and the importance of listening when others offer their help. Future generations must remember what almost happened here. Dr. Steve Hamilton had already begun establishing joint research facilities where human and alien scientists would work together to develop new defenses against unknown threats. The isolation and competition that had characterized previous galactic civilization was being replaced by cooperation and shared knowledge. As the meeting ended and the representatives departed to inform their peoples of the new order, Sullivan remained in the chamber with his senior staff. Through the transparent walls he could see the stars that humanity now protected against threats both known and unknown. "Do you think they truly understand what they lost?" asked General Morris as she studied reports from the reconstruction efforts. "Not just the war, but the friendship we offered them for 3 years." Sullivan considered the question while watching alien refugees being cared for by human medical teams and protected by human military forces. The species that had laughed at human warnings were now alive only because of human sacrifice and preparedness. "They understand now," he replied. "The question is whether their children will remember the lesson when new challenges arise. History has a way of repeating itself when people forget the cost of their mistakes." The galaxy was safe under human protection, but the empty colonies served as silent reminders that even the most advanced civilizations could fall to their own pride and prejudice.